The flush completes on the river and you're holding a straight, but your opponent bets. Would you raise or just call? Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm doing another hand analysis video of my own poker hands. Here in this game I'm playing a live 5-5 cash game here in Switzerland. And I was a bit tilted because of the hand prior to this one. So I played a rather unusual hand, but I'm glad that I actually played this hand so we have something to analyze. Here in this spot, the under the gun 2 player just limps and the low check limps as well. So we have a limped pot here in this situation. I'm on the button, 520 bucks effective. I'm holding check 10 offsuit, normally a hand that I would definitely just fold. But here I decided to bump it up to 30 bucks and play for a bit more here. Small blind, big blind get out of the way, under the gun 2 and low check both called a 30. So I'm well aware that this is way too loose pre-flop with check 10 offsuit, but I just decided to go for it here. Maybe we can make something happen. And we get two callers, but at least we are in position being on the button. We get a flop, which is rather nice for our range, I think, as the pre-flop raiser ace 10-5 rainbow. Under the gun 2 checks, low check checks, and now we are in the situation. Normally, I checked with the solver 80% of the time it wants to check and only bet 20% of the time. And when it bets 1/3 of the pot. So I thought this was kind of good for my range. So I decided to go for the 1/3 pot bet of $30. I'm aware that normally I should slow down a bit and check a bit more with my marginal hands. I've learned that in the studying sessions of the last few analysis that I did. Here I still decided to go for the 1/3 bet because I kind of thought I could push them out of the pot and I have some outs with the 10s and the checks if I need them. It works for under the gun too. By the way, it's a bit tricky to analyze with the solver the pre-flop spots and post-flop spots when there are multiple people in the hand. So sometimes I have to adjust a bit and try to learn something even though I can't simulate it 1-to-1 perfectly into the solver. But I just don't also want to become a GTO expert. I just want to be a normal player. So I need this solver analysis kind of as a guideline to improve, but I don't just focus on it. I also focus on just human understanding of the hands. So under the gun 2 calls this and the low check gets out of the way. So we have one opponent left and we are going to a turn which is the queen of hearts. So this turn now brings in the flush draw and it brings in some straights that might have completed. I also have a gut shot here to a king. And here, interestingly enough, he takes the betting lead and he goes for 1/4 25% pot for $40. And here I pretty much have an easy call. I have a middling pair and some backdoor some equity in form of my gut shot with my king, and also a 10 or a jack would be pretty nice. A jack maybe would put a one-liner to a king, which might be a bit dangerous, but I still thought here in this situation I don't really believe him that he has anything leading out on this turn, which I don't think should have changed a lot, but maybe it did. Maybe he has king jack or something that actually goes there with the straight. I decided I have enough equity to just call here, and we go to a river, which now is a very interesting spot, which I thought I was really glad that I actually played this hand, because the river with the king of hearts brings a straight and a flush. For me, I have straight now. I have my check. Any check, it's a one-liner to a jack, so any jack makes a straight here. So there's also a chance that me might be chopping here with my opponent. He goes again for a small bet. He bets $50 into 240 pot, which is not even 20% of the pot. And now here I face an interesting decision that I wanted to analyze a bit further with the solver, and I did. What I thought in the game is I have a straight and I still lose to a flush. I have my blocker, which is the jack of hearts in my hands, so he can't have a royal flush, and it cuts down the combinations of hands that he could have arrived here with. but I somehow wasn't sure if my Jack of Hearts blocker was enough to raise. I was for sure calling here because of the blocker and because of my hand strength with the straight is rather strong. So I didn't really believe him that he has a flush here because of my blocker. But I wasn't really sure if the Jack of Hearts blocker was enough to actually raise here because I don't have a flush, I just have a straight. I ended up just calling here for the 50. Interestingly enough, I ran the spot through the solver and I can just estimate. Maybe some of you are little bit more advanced players can help me out here with this spot. So interestingly enough, the solver always raises with the Jack of Hearts blocker when having Jack 10 here in this spot, which I think is rather interesting. Like my hand, Jack of Hearts, 10 of diamonds, the solver wants to raise. Rather small, but it wants to raise. Sometimes it also wants to go all in. So there are a bit of nuances here, I think. But vast majority of the time it would go to like $120 raise here. Like not a min raise, but a rather small one. I thought it was interesting that with the Jack of Hearts blocker, it just wants to raise all the time. But with the 10 of Hearts, let's say the suits were reversed, with the Jack of Diamonds, 10 of Hearts, then it would just call all the time. Which I wasn't really sure why, because I thought that both of them block the royal flush and the straight flush, and both of them block the flush generally. And I wasn't really sure why the Jack of Hearts would be so much more helpful for me to have here as a blocker when I want to raise and go for more value. I kind of figured it out afterwards, but I had an estimate, I had an educated guess what it could be. After I found out that the solver always raises with a Jack 9 or a Jack 8 combo, even with no hearts. But it mostly calls with a Jack 10 combo. So I thought Jack 9 or Jack 8 are both straights, but neither a 9 nor an 8 is on the board. So it kind of changes the dynamic a little bit as far as blockers are concerned, because I think I can just do an educated guess. Maybe some of you can actually correct me in the comment section. When you try to analyze it, Jack 9 or Jack 8 have less value removal, which kind of means that if I'm having a 10 in my hand, then my opponent probably doesn't have a 10, or the chances is less likely, less likely that he has a 10. So he might have less combos or fewer combos that he can hero call me, for example. So if I go with a raise and he has a 10, he might hero call me, which improves or increases the value of my raise, so to say. I wasn't sure if it's really that, but I thought that it might be the case that when you don't have a 10, you can raise more because the opponent can hero call with a 10, so to say. I'm not sure if that makes any sense. That's what I figured out during the analysis, but I'm not sure if it's actually correct, if I don't understand that concept correctly here. So in the game, I decided to just call here, which is probably a bit nitty. It's a bit passive. I should have gone for a raise after considering all the factors here. And my opponent has a combination, has a hand that I never expected to show up here. King of clubs, 5 of diamonds for 2 pair. And he kind of went for a little bit of value on the river. I'm not sure if this specific opponent would call a raise here. Would you call a raise here in his shoes if you had 2 pair here with the flush and the straight being there? I probably wouldn't, because any jack makes a straight, so it's just too easy for me here to have a straight or a flush even, if he has no hearts whatsoever. And I dragged in this pot here, the $340. I could have gone for more value. Maybe it was a bit passive. Tell me in the comments what you would have done, and tell me if my ideas for the blockers and when to raise, when not to raise are correct, or maybe my thinking is completely flawed. Tell me what you would have done, and I'm gonna see you in the next video.